Well, good afternoon, everyone. Quick housekeeping items and some reminders. Please keep yourself on mute here this afternoon. Add your affiliation next to your Zoom ID, if you don't mind, for your Zoom ID. And as always, Arnie is here to record permission. So if you need that, let him know. We'll take care of you. And if you have a question, use the virtual raised hand function. Well, as you know, announced earlier by the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, a shift from the streets of Nashville to the famed Nashville Superspeedway for the 2024 NTT IndyCar Series season finale, really for both the NTT IndyCar Series and Indy Next by Firestone. We know that conversations will continue with city stakeholders to decide the right moment to return to the streets of Nashville. In the meantime, for the first time in a decade, there'll be an exciting oval finale on the schedule, and for the first time in 14 years, there are 3 or more oval races, in this case 3, to wrap up an NTT IndyCar Series championship. And joining us today, the president and CEO of Penske Entertainment Corp., Mr. Mark Miles is here. Mark, thank you. And the Big Machine Label Group chairman and founder, Scott Borchetta. Scott, great to see you as well.
Thanks, Dave. Great to be here this morning.
Yeah, let's begin with you. First 3 races on the streets have been nothing short of really exciting, unpredictable, spectacular. Talk us through the challenges of staying downtown, but also the opportunity that the event now has at Nashville Superspeedway.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And we're very proud of those first 3 years. And we really met a perfect storm with being able to work with the Titans and the city. And we really didn't utilize too much of the downtown. We came across the bridge, basically turned around and came back. And the Titans Stadium was central to all of our operations, our paddock, team hospitality, et cetera. So while there was an awareness going into the 24 race of some of the things that we would not have available to us, once we really started digging down over the last 7-8 weeks, and trying to understand how we could make the new footprint work, because we would come back across the bridge. For those of you who are familiar with downtown, go up First Street, left up Broadway, left across 4th Avenue over to Korean Veterans, and then back across the bridge. So within that, we flat don't have all the lots that we need to house all the teams. We don't have room for team hospitality. We don't have a very specific answer from the NFL in regard to a Titans home game that could be on September 15th. The NFL will not release their schedule until May. We don't have the type of access that I'm happy to present to downtown businesses and residents, as far as a proper flow through deliveries, et cetera. It's unfortunate, but I've just taken control of this really since December. And I know what I want to do to protect our brand, to protect the INDYCAR brand, to make sure that the fans have a great experience. And every day it just started to become untenable to do it for this year. Now, if we had started a year ago on all of this stuff, which I was not in a leadership position, I was simply the sponsor at that point, some of these things could have been addressed. But you might say, well, Scott, it's not for 8 months. 8 months is nothing with all the things that have to be done for a street race. And I think all of you are very experienced in this space and know that. And the last thing that we were going to do on my watch is fail. And that means fail to have an IndyCar race in Nashville when we've had that luxury to be able to do so. So once we started really understanding the challenges, and they kept mounting up, spoke with Mark and the great team at Penske Entertainment. And, this idea, we kind of knew if we had to bail on downtown that we could go to the Nashville Superspeedway. So when I presented Mark and team with my discovery, and they've been along with me every step of the way, I can't say enough. I feel like I'm a Penske Entertainment employee a lot of days. But once we got to that decision, I went and met with Marcus Smith at SMI, who's a dear friend. And obviously I'm part of the team trying to bring NASCAR back to the fairgrounds here in Nashville. And he was ecstatic at the thought of bringing IndyCar back to the oval. And for those of you who attended back in the day, I attended all those races. You may remember that the IndyCar races were the best draw of all of them. We didn't have a cup race, but we had a Busch race, we had a truck race, et cetera. the Indy cars always did the best, and some spectacular races there. And so with everything SMI has done to the racetrack and everything that we're going to do to continue to promote it, we are going to keep, I know I'm probably answering everybody's question, but I'm on a roll here, so I won't stop. We are going to keep the aesthetic of Nashville. We're going to have the pit stop competition on Friday, late afternoon, early evening. We're going to have our rooftop parties on Friday and Saturday. We're going to have for our upper end clients, we're going to have the ability to helicopter in and out from downtown out to the super speedway. So there's a lot of things that we've thought through already. There's a lot more to do, but I'm so confident with the Penske entertainment team and with SMI. I think I have the two best in the business when it comes to operations. So it's up to me to not mess it up.
Right. Well, Scott, stand by. Mark, certainly playing off that, knowing that the activations will continue around the city, including the famed honky tonks, all that is important. With that, really the vision for this event doesn't change, does it?
No, I think that's right. But before I really answer your question, I want to look Scott in the virtual eye and say in front of all these gathered thanks. We are so fortunate to have Scott Borchetta step up and assume the leadership position of this event going forward. With his racing background, with his entertainment background, with his standing and stature in Nashville, we just couldn't be in better hands. And evidence of that is, I mean, I think, Scott, you and I probably had a phone call a day at least since about the middle of December, including through the holidays, to really get into the weeds. And I admire the way you had a clear-eyed approach to critical analysis to see where we are. And, you know, it would be a different situation if you hadn't done that. And let's say we got to May of this year and then figured out that some of these variables weren't going to fall our way and we might not be able to do the race downtown. And then what? We probably wouldn't be in Nashville. And that really goes, I think, in part, Dave, to your question. The intent, the pivotal thing is that this is a Nashville event. Even if the racing isn't downtown right now, that is eventually the intent and the vision for the event. But with Scott's leadership and all of us pulling on the same oar, we think we can have phenomenal racing on the oval, and at the same time have one amazing party weekend and take advantage of all that Nashville has to offer. And I will say, given that this has sort of gotten out a little bit, I'm really gratified by the response so far. I did speak to a number of drivers before this media event, to the person, kind of absorb it and then go, we're going to race. The finale is going to be on an oval. Really good enthusiasm for that fact. And fans have responded largely similarly. Fans, to some extent, I saw responses which were sort of, okay, it's different. Now let's rally behind it and make it a great Nashville event. So we feel really good about the early reception to this news.
With that, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions, get to as many as we can here in the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. We'll begin with Nathan Brown from the Indianapolis Star. Go ahead, Nathan, you there?
I am. Hey, thanks, guys.
Okay. Good.
Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Have a couple questions. Feel free for either of you guys to chime in, whoever feels best fit. First question for me, Scott, I know you touched on this a little bit, pointing out the concerns that you guys had about being able to launch this event in September of next year. Was there anything that changed in particular to new concerns about some conflicts, or did this come from a deeper look from you and other folks running this event when you took over in December?
Yeah, it was all of the above. So looking at, the expenditure of what it takes to properly execute that race, and to, we have a new mayor who's attended all three races and who comes from city council and is just very much the fabric of where Nashville is right now. And the prior mayor, Mayor Cooper, he had a different way of doing things, and some of the things he just pushed through. And I say that because I'm getting to a timing situation where with Mayor O'Connell, there would have to be 3 council readings to get approval. Now, nobody's saying that we wouldn't, but I wouldn't have a specific answer until the end of April. I mentioned the NFL. We wouldn't know until May. I mentioned I'm not personally satisfied with our solution that has been presented to me for traffic. You know, we're a very important brand in Nashville. The last thing I want is a dark mark on the Big Machine brand. And so it just got to a point where the new mayor and his team, who have been incredibly communicative, they came back to me with some specific things that we requested. And we all just looked at each other and said, you know what, we're trying to put 10 gallons in a 5-gallon bucket for this year. And so really that's some of the deeper things that led to this decision.
Would you say, I want to make sure I'm characterizing this correctly. Would you say, like looking back, obviously hindsight is 2020. I mean, is it fair to say that maybe not enough due diligence was done before announcing and putting the plans in place in August, in terms of the ability and what it was going to take and the cost and the potential conflicts of executing this at the level that you want it to do when that news was formalized last August?
Yeah, Nathan, I think that's a somewhat fair assessment because the team had been doing it successfully on the prior track. I don't think that they really understood how much more it was going to take to actually run through what we call the island downtown. And so not having those conversations way in advance, they should have happened a year ago. And they didn't. So that's definitely part of the challenge. And it didn't give any of the municipalities the proper time to really understand and address this. So that was one of the big items for sure.
Have there been any additional concerns or additional larger projects in terms of construction going on downtown that have popped up since August that have made this potentially more difficult than it would have seemed to be when you guys announced back in August?
Well, our joke is the crane is the state bird of Tennessee. So there's no way to properly understand every build that's happening. There's a big Morgan Wallen build going on right now. There's a big Bon Jovi build going on right now. And, when those trucks got to move, they've got to move. And when you look at the 4th Avenue corridor, all of the businesses that are affected there and construction. So yeah, the overall construction of Nashville is definitely one of the things that is going to prevent us. Outside of the Titan Stadium, there are several builds happening along Broadway and within the footprint that continue to make it more challenging.
You guys, I believe, signed a 3-year contract or 3-year extension, however you want to phrase it, to run through 2026. You guys announced said in the release that you guys will hold conversations with the city and the Titans about potentially moving back downtown when the time is right. Given the construction project that's going to continue going on with the Titan Stadium over the next several years, do you envision it being possible to get back downtown before that construction is completed and before your guys' current contract expires?
The Titan Stadium takes precedence for the city. It just does. And I don't see that we can properly race downtown until that stadium is completed. And, as of right now, they are scheduled to return in the fall of 27. So, I think we just got to continue the conversations. There's nothing I can say that's conclusive today. We all have a great desire to race Indy cars in Nashville. We have a great desire to return to the streets when we can. And there's really nothing more factual I can give you than that.
My last question, as I understood it, Jason Rittenberry was obviously in charge of this race in its first couple of years. With you taking over, is he still part of running, operating, organizing this race, or have you guys parted ways with Jason?
No, Jason is still part of 615 GP. He's very efficient and proficient in operations, and Jason is still with us.
Thank you for all that, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. A couple quick questions from Bruce Martin. He texted in one for Scott, one for Mark as well. Scott, for you, Bruce is asking, how long do you expect to be at Nashville Superspeedway?
Well, I think somewhat to my last response, we want to keep racing in Nashville. And I'm not taking any chance of not putting on a great show in September. So I'm taking a lot of responsibility. I know a lot of things that we want to do, we're going to do. And I want all of you on September 16th to say, they did a great job. That's my goal. I know it's a lot to ask from all of you, but I accept the challenge. So regarding when we could turn back into Nashville, it's really just going to depend on our continued conversations. And, there's a lot of things that are very positive about racing in Tennessee. Our governor, Governor Lee, has been incredibly pro racing. And we're working on a Tennessee State Racing Commission that we hope comes to fruition. But he has attended the event. He held a great party for us last year. And so, we have the support of the city, we have the support of the state, and when we can get back there, we will.
And Mark, again, a question from Bruce Martin from Speed Sport and Forbes. For you, he asked how the dynamic of the championship with 3 straight ovals might change things. There is a greater chance of someone through the field making up enough positions on an oval to get a come from behind championship that may not have existed on a road or street course. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I know a lot of fans are excited about it. So, and I know drivers are excited about it. We'll see what actual effect it will have. But, ovals are a big part of IndyCar's brand. And it's been a while since we concluded on an oval, let alone 3 different races at the end of the championship. So we think that's going to be very exciting and something that fans will watch very closely.
Thanks, Mark. Let's go to Joey Barnes from motorsport.com. Hi, Joey.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Joey.
So a couple of things just I know it's only been like an hour and a half, 2 hours since the news came out, and some of what we've gathered on our side from some responses. There's been some fans that maybe even though tickets haven't been sold yet for the downtown race, because it was announced in August, they've already booked their travel, done their hotels, everything like that. What kind of accommodations, if any, could be made to maybe help lessen the blow for people who had already estimated travel to be in downtown, and instead it's going to be located 35 minutes away from downtown?
Yeah, we're pretty spoiled in Tennessee that we think 35 minutes is a long way away. If we were going to the race at the Coliseum a few weeks ago, it would have taken 90 minutes to do anything, right? So we're going to absolutely make sure fans first. We're going to have shuttles available. We're going to have evening entertainment. I'm going to say this every time. We're going to make sure it feels like Nashville, and we accept that responsibility. We want the fans to come. One of the whole ideas of building this race was giving people another reason to come to Nashville. If you've been here, you probably fall in love with it. It's become a party town. It's always been a great music town. It's Southern hospitality is a very real thing. It's not a cliche. So we are absolutely concerned about that fan that has high expectations of having a great event, and that's the goal that we've got to achieve.
And then, one of the challenges over the years for IndyCar in general has been trying to figure out a way to bring people to the ovals. Like outside of the Indy 500, I mean, attendance has been tough at some of the ovals that have been on the schedule. Although you're doing this stuff downtown, the pit stop competition, the rooftop parties, et cetera, what are you going to be doing at the racetrack itself to try to liven it up and create a festival type of atmosphere that gets people more engaged and switched on than they've been at other ovals?
Yeah, we're going to make sure the midway is really rocking. So we'll have music from the time you walk in. There's a lot of partners we're already talking to about bringing their executables out there. So more to come on that, but it's going to be very lively from the time you hit the grounds.
And then question for Mark. Obviously, it's been a little bit of a challenging offseason for everybody over at the IndyCar offices and Penske Entertainment with the delays, this pivot, et cetera, et cetera. At Media Day, a lot of the drivers that met with leadership the night before kind of talked about trusting the process, that bigger things were ahead. I guess the question is, how can fans expect to trust the process when there's been so much over this offseason that's kind of rattled everything for everybody?
Yeah, well, I think it's a fair question. It's been a long off season, but we're excited about getting on the track and racing. But I think fans, as drivers have, need to keep in mind that this is the way we see it. Every fan metric is up. So we're the only motorsports series in the country where television ratings and every other metric has been positive and increased.
Yeah.
I don't think we get a lot of credit for that, and maybe it should be at a higher rate of growth, but it's important and it matters a lot to us. So that's audience. Attendance at almost every one of our races last year was up. Merch sales was up everywhere. All of our digital metrics are really meaningfully up. We launched our 100 Days to Indy series last year, and we just announced that season 2 is going to happen and have great distribution for season 1. More on that coming. So we think there's a lot of good news. And look, I think it was maybe Nathan that said hindsight's 2020, but on this, again, I think we're in a good position to make the most of the opportunities in Nashville with the teamwork with Scott Borchetta and his access in the city. I think it's a great way to reprofile ovals for us, to increase the oval, the number of ovals in our championship, which a lot of fans are excited about, and yet take advantage of the opportunities to have fun in downtown Nashville. So we'll work through this, and at the same time, I think Scott's already said it, the vision and the intent behind this event is to get to downtown, and we hope that we can do that in the foreseeable future.
And then just the last one out of me is, obviously there's a lot of talk over this offseason about figuring out how to negotiate the new TV deal. What's that look like? I guess to that end, how does this situation impact that, if any?
Yeah, we're very pleased with the process and the progress in terms of relicensing our rights for 2025. I don't see this as impacting it at all. It's still a Nashville event. We have 17 races. And the finale is in Nashville. So, look, ratings go up and down based on lots of things. We've had some, starting with the 500, outstanding audiences on television for oval racing. It depends more on what else we're running opposite, frankly, than the particular genre. So I don't think it has any impact whatsoever on these discussions, which are generally positive.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Joey. Got time for a couple more. Dan Jones, Dive Bomb Motorsports. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Dave. So just a couple of questions. So first of all, for Scott, the layout was planned to be changed for this year ahead of the changes to the Nissan Stadium. Once the time comes to return to the streets, is there any intention to keep the same layout, or we're going to be reverting back to the one we've used in the first 3 Music City Grand Prix?
Great question. And, one of the CAD drawings I've seen of the new stadium and the East Bank, there is a thoroughfare that goes between the two. And one of the conversations we had early on with Mayor Cooper was we may be able to race right between those two pieces as part of the racetrack. I think the less we use of downtown, the better. I want to make sure we touch it, but racing through it like we have proposed for this year is that's going to continue to be challenging. Let's not pull any punches, but the way that the East Bank is coming together and everything that is one of the top items for Mayor O'Connell to get completed and get properly funded. And we're in his ear about that. We want to be part of the conversation and the thought process of how we can continue to utilize that footprint. So I think when we come back downtown, a lot of the race will still happen on the other side of the river. We still use the bridge, and perhaps we use a similar, layout on this side of the river, if you will, that we've done in past years. There's going to be a different on-ramp for the bridge that's coming as well. So it's going to give us a lot of opportunities to really figure out a great racetrack for the future.
Thanks, Scott. And then just for Mark, when the initial calendar was released, potentially after Nashville, you were looking at options for a non-championship race in Argentina. Obviously, that's been the MotoGP event there's been cancelled. So is there any options still being explored for this year or potentially next year, or is that off the table?
No, I think you're right. Observers have noticed that it's difficult to do business right now in Argentina, so I don't see it as a viable option for this year. I think everybody understands that Ricardo Juncos has been our strong advocate and prospective promoter. If we could do an event in Argentina, he's there now, talking, assessing the situation, talking to the elected officials and policymakers. So it's an ongoing conversation, but I don't think it's feasible for 2024.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
You got it. We got time for one more. David Land, go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. This is for Mark. Not only is this the season finale for the INDYCAR series, but also for Indy Next presented by Firestone. This is the first time since 2019 that series has raced on a track of this type. Just talk about the discussions that you had with the teams in the series to get that done.
Well, in one way, I'll get your question, but it starts with Firestone, which of course is its headquarters is there, and they've been a great advocate and a great supporter of Indy Next. So they're excited about it. We're excited about it. We think it will show well. There obviously will be some tire testing, and then probably other tests that we'll have to schedule to be sure everybody's ready. But I think it's great that we can have the finales together there.
And will that testing also carry over to the INDYCAR series?
We haven't really defined the schedule, but the process is probably the same. That's really Jay. I know Jay Fry's thinking about that right now. Starts with tires, and then they can assess what else is needed, either technically or from the point of view of the drivers.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, I know it's a busy schedule for everyone, and with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for today. Again, our thanks to both Scott Borchetta. Scott, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
And Mark Miles, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, folks.
Yeah, a quick reminder that video from today's video news conference, along with the transcripts, will be available very shortly, probably the next half hour to 45 minutes or so. It'll be available on the INDYCAR content site. Thanks, everyone, for your time today. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Dave.